It's Wednesday night, and you know what that means. We're back live on the big mountain.
We missed last week.
Yeah.
We apologize, everyone. We were meeting and doing our recording with Doug Rohan, and went great. Hopefully you got to see that episode. If not, you can check out the channel after this. But we're back live. We always enjoy our live episodes. Always enjoy saying hello to some of our viewers, commenters, subscribers. I'm calling them dwellers. Mountain dwellers. That's what I'm calling our TBM peeps. But we got an awesome show tonight, Steve. I think this is going to be our best one yet because we got a whole bunch of good stuff to talk about. Let me lay out what we're going to do, and then we'll get into it. So we're going to quickly talk FSU ACC. We just recorded an episode before going live on that. We're going to talk hearing that happened on Monday. Obviously, we all know that there was a dismissal with a leave for an amendment. But we also get into the AG Moody letter that just came out, give some of our opinions on that, do a little bit of a deep dive, on not really on the letter, but in terms of what we think it could mean moving forward, different options there. And then the next hearing, as we know right now, is set for May 2nd in Mecklenburg, North Carolina. Steve, that's next week.
It's coming fast.
Never ends. And then Leon County, we're not 100% sure when we're going to get another hearing down there because of the refiling, and then they have time, the ACC will have time to respond to that filing, then have to set a hearing, and blah, 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 blah. So a little bit later down there in Leon County. We also did a Clemson episode.
Yep.
We'll get that one out on Friday. They're actually, there's no really news breaking on that, and the episode doesn't have breaking news, but there have been some filings, there has been some movement on that, so we break that down in that episode, and there's deadlines coming up for the ACC here next week as well, the beginning of May, so we're probably going to see some action here with the Pickens, South Carolina courts, and of course our friend Bledsoe in Mecklenburg. So, yeah,
and not to mention, we did a couple fun episodes that should be coming up soon.
Mm-hmm.
We did a best football movies ever episode, tons of fun, and then we did a. What if we do get a Super League? JY and I sat down and drafted what our ideal, we did it kind of on the NFL model of 32 teams,
right.
2 conferences. Right. It was a lot of fun, just a fun exercise. So I hope you guys check those out and leave us some comments. Tell us where we went wrong, who we should have drafted, who I took too early, and what the heck was JY thinking with this pick, and all that stuff.
You can tell, Steve, how great the JY conference is compared to the Steve conference. We'll get that one out next week, either Monday or Tuesday. And Steve, we had a special guest. We're getting good with this special guest stuff. So we thanks to our producer, PWB Productions back here. He's got us all hooked up with Zoom. It's kind of fun. So we had a special guest for the movie one as well. His name is TV Todd Shell. He's a good friend of mine. But he's got lots of entertainment background, he's got law background, production, all kinds of different stuff. And he's probably worked on some shows that you guys know of. But we dive into football movies because they're fun. And we're probably going to do something with him once a month because, again, we had a lot of fun. It was a good episode. So if you want to hear from us on what our favorite movies are, football movies are, that episode's coming out early next week. Who we got on here so far, Steve?
Shout out to Squeezed Money.
All right.
He's here. He's always here. Hey,
yes.
Squeezed Money. We appreciate you. One of our most loyal fans.
Yep.
We got Chad Bracey here and Expedition Greg. They're already loading us up with maybe some comments or some topics to discuss. I think some of these we're already going to discuss.
Yes, for sure. Yep, Expedition Greg, May 2nd, next hearing in Mecklenburg County. We're going to drop another episode tomorrow on the FSU ACC lawsuits. We get into a little bit of what we know in terms of timelines. And of course, like I said, we dive into the Moody letter and a little bit more into the hearing as well. But that's old news now. Everybody knows what happened at the hearing, but we talk about it. We like to think people like to hear our opinions.
For sure.
We talk.
We like to talk. If someone wants to listen, cool.
That's right. Anyway, hey, drop some comments down below. We'll definitely get the questions if you have them. Just say hello. We love to know who's on. I see we have about 20 on right now. We probably have some of our normal regulars. Aloha Nate. There it is, The Water Boy. Aloha Nate, watch. That might be a movie that comes up. I'm not going to say it gets into our top ones, but it may be brought up there with that episode. So, we got Mr. Ed. I know he's been following us now for quite a while. And Expedition Greg, I think, has been with us for a while. Maybe the first time Expedition Greg has been on a live show. So welcome if you guys are new to the live shows. Really happy that you guys are here. We got again, a full slate of things. We're talking FSU, ACC. We just did that. I want to talk real quick about the speculation, the alleged membership speculation that Pfluger brought up here just a couple days ago. We're going to go over that real quick because it's hot news. We got to talk about it. Then we're going to get into the Pac-12. They lose their autonomous status. We want to talk about that. Then, of course, we're going to get into the Big Ten. We're going to get into the Mountain West. And, Steve, with the Mountain West, just to give everybody a heads up, there was an article with The Athletic that just came out about the G5 leaders discussing a potential G5 playoff and maybe some other things. So we'll talk about that and get our opinions, get the opinions of some of our commenters on that. Would love to know what you think about the G5. And I've got a few schools I want to talk about, too, in the Mountain West. So
awesome. And Genetics popped in for a little peek.
Oh, there it is.
Hello, Genetics. We appreciate you anytime you're here.
Oh, and Dave Stir, he's a good one, too. He loves saying hello on our PAC. He's one of our PAC fans. So we're going to get... Hey, speaking of PAC, well, let's get the Pfluger first, and then we'll get the PAC.
Okay, let's go.
Does that work?
And Dave wants to hear our thoughts on the autonomous status of the PAC. I know we're going to get to that. So
that is coming right after we get to the peek around the corner speculation on the ESPN agreement. And keyword here is speculation. I think he said it. He said alleged, I think, about 100 times.
Yes.
And it took me a while to actually finally get to the what was alleged because he kept saying the same thing over and over. But anyway, I'm not trying to crap on him. It just, I was like, get to the point. Yeah. But anyway, so the alleged membership obligations that Texas University, so this is the SEC, ESPN media rights agreement. That's where this is coming from, this alleged wording. And again, he was very clear. This is alleged. It's not a legit copy of that agreement. People are saying this is what the agreement says. But anyway, the membership obligations of Texas that it has with the SEC and ESPN. Allegedly, the Texas media rights, their own media rights for their games, that's in the media rights agreement between the SEC and ESPN, are tied to that agreement for as long as they are members in the SEC. Supposedly, it actually says that in the media rights agreement, that it's tied to them only as long as they're members. Now, we hear a lot of this. We tie this back to the FSU. The ACC saying, you can leave, but we still own your media rights. Yeah, I mean, we still own the broadcasting rights for your games until, as of right now, 2036 is what they're saying. So there's a lot of hubbub, a lot of speculation that, wow, if the ACC's media right agreement is the same as what the SEC's media right agreement is, that this is why they're hiding it. This is why they're not letting anybody see it. So, right now, nobody has any freaking clue. Yeah. It's alleged. We don't know. Is it fun to speculate if this is the case? Yeah, it's fun to speculate. But, and I had to bring it up because this was like the kind of the big news of the week that kind of came up. But it's all speculation, and nobody really knows. What do you think?
Like you said, speculation. I mean, Fluke, he's trying to keep his 15 minutes of fame going to maybe be a little bit longer. So I don't have any reason to put him down like you mentioned, but I just don't really know if this is anything. I think the one thing that's kind of interesting about this topic is, as we move forward and as this stuff comes out in the Florida State ACC lawsuits, I think you're going to see that definitely, conferences and media partners are trying to protect themselves and trying to protect their potential trade secrets, to protect the value of their media deal. But I think teams, as they move, programs, schools, as they move from one conference to another, I think they're seeing what's happened with Florida State and how Florida State and Clemson are kind of trapped in a sinking ship.
Yeah.
And they're going to look to protect themselves as well. So I have no idea. Everything is alleged in the this thing with Fluke.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's much ado about nothing.
Yeah.
But I do see going forward, until we get to a point where maybe these do become some kind of semi-professional leagues and you have a structure similar to the NFL. I don't know if that will ever happen. But in the meantime, as this plays out in the conference settings, I think as you see programs move around, that's going to be that battle on the front side. How can the teams protect themselves?
Yeah.
Programs protect themselves, and how can the conference ensure? Because the conferences don't want to be in the same position that the ACC is in right now.
For sure.
So, and the programs don't want to be in the same position that Florida State and Clemson are. So I'm sure they're going to be looking for ways to protect themselves.
Yeah, and I would just add, that is not my reading of the grant of rights, the ACC grant of rights at all.
Yeah.
It reads the completely opposite
Right.
of my reading. I know we have FSU fans that say, JY, you're reading it wrong, but my reading of the grant of rights does not read that way. I also will point out, Genetics says that the membership thing was a tad overblown. They can't contractually trap a school in, into a conference. So, if we're done with that, I think we're done with FSU ACC. Again, we got a standalone episode coming out on the Seminole case tomorrow and the Clemson case on Friday. So if you're interested with those two things, we got you covered. So let's get to the PAC. I know that's what, who was asking for that?
Was
Star?
that Dave?
Or Dave, yes. Dave,
Yeah.
It's Dave Stir.
Dave Stir.
Dave Stir. And I got a quick question for Aloha Nate. I want to know from Aloha Nate, what makes alligators angry?
Okay.
If you get where I'm going with that.
Okay.
You know where I'm going with that?
No.
He knows where I'm going with
Okay.
that. What makes alligators angry? All right, with that, let's get to the Pac-12. And we hear now they have lost their autonomous status. So I want to lay out briefly what was, kind of put into that NCAA board approval. There was more there than just that. Of course, that's the big headline here with that. But the NCAA board approved that when a conference enters this 2-year grace period, the conference will continue to retain representation and voting rights on the D1 Council. They'll continue to retain representation on sport committees, to which they have participating, right? And they'll be permitted to submit nominations from their conference for D1 standing committees. During the grace period, the conference will not retain representation on the D1 Board of Governors. The board then moved the PAC from an autonomy FBS conference to a non-autonomy FBS conference effective August 2nd. And I do not think autonomy status is a given moving forward. To me, my reading of this, and I saw a lot of back and forth when this first on Twitter. There was people, does that mean that it automatically comes back or it won't automatically? Is this just for the 2 years? Is it not? My reading of this is it's not going to automatically come back. They're going to have to vote again to give them autonomy. That's the way I read this. Now, there were people questioning if that was the case or not. But as we sit here today, Steve, PAC is no more AP. PAC is no more an A.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts?
So my first thought is I think part of the problem of why it's a little confusing is because we didn't actually get a report or letter or anything from the D1 Council. We have media reports. And some of the things that they determined, it specifically says in the media reports, they specifically write that this is during the time that where they are, and it says until they catch back up to where they are. But then there's some other rulings where that's not particularly clear. So maybe if we I went on the NCAA website, look at their publications when they produce reports and rulings and findings, whatever. And it's not on there yet. So we're basically going off of the press from what I've seen.
We are, but again, when I read what the board presented, what the NCAA presented, I read it as it was taken away from them. And yes, they're under this 2-year grace period. Yes, yeah. And here's what they get or what they don't get out of it. But kind of a separate step to that, in a separate paragraph. This wasn't another line under that 2-year grace period that they changed. It was another paragraph, if you will. It said they are removed. My reading of that is they will have to be given it back. It won't automatically, if they add 10 teams or 6 teams, and they get to 8, in 2026, it's not an automatic autonomous status anymore. They have to be given the autonomous status, and I don't see that happening. They're not going to give people.
Well, what I'm saying, so when you say you're reading this, are you reading something that was produced by the NCAA or a?
It was the blurb. No. It was the blurb that they put out.
Yeah. Well, I think even with that, I think there was some confusion. There's
I get the confusion
because they put in there until they build back up to their 8 status, whatever. So that. I think that's what caused some of the confusion because there's different people that are saying it means this, it means that. But the point I want to get to on this is I don't really know that in reality it makes that big of a difference. Okay, and here's why. I think psychologically, it's just another blow to the Pac-2. It's just another, they couldn't say they were a P5 anymore, so then they started saying, we're an A5, and now this is another thing that gets taken away from. I think it's psychological. When you look at the benefits that the autonomous conferences had, it basically was, okay, they can pay the full, the full cost of attendance, not just the tuition. I don't know that there's going to be a huge material difference in these next 2 years. I don't think it's going to make a big difference. But however, I think it is a psychological thing. It's just another thing. It's just another block in the wall where they're basically being put down to a lower level.
Yes.
And they can't claim, it's just another thing they can't claim anymore of being that Power 5. I think it's more for show than it's going to have an impact in reality.
Well, I think the impact in reality, and it gets to a question, who said this here? Okay, Aloha Nate. Pac-12 losing autonomy eliminates any reason for other G5 schools to join. So, and that's speculatory, but I'm on Aloha's Nate's side here. And so I get what you're saying in the fact that it doesn't affect them for the next 2 years, because as you call it, they're in their bridge years. I get that. Yep. But if one of the paths to the other side of their bridge is to rebuild a PAC, to which at this point, I'm sorry, PAC people, but I have very little doubt that that's even viable. I was going to say viable at this point. I just do. I mean, they've lost P, they've lost A, and to Aloha's Nate's point, and I agree, the attraction of coming to an A conference is now gone. And rightfully so. I think it should have been taken away. Do you disagree?
Yeah, I don't think it changes any of their paths whatsoever, because
I do.
Even if they were going to rebuild a PAC with all G5 teams, it's obvious that the D1 Council and the other schools were never going to consider. They're not just going to say, okay, you were a power conference, you lost to everybody, now you added these G5 teams and you're a power conference again. I don't think that was ever a reasonable thing.
Okay.
A reasonable path.
Okay.
Their reasonable paths, which I think you and I have mostly agreed on, is they're either going to those two schools, if they could find a home in a Big 12 or ACC, they would jump on it.
Yeah.
But so far, it doesn't look like that's going to happen.
Right.
So their reasonable path is most likely to either just join the Mountain West, okay, or all the Mountain West teams join the PAC, or they have some kind of a merger. And what I've said all along is it doesn't matter which way you do it. I don't think it changes any of their real viable paths. But I think it's just another psychological blow. Okay. They went from claiming we're a P5 to we're an A5. Right. They can't claim that anymore.
They're independents.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of. That's where we're at now. Sorry if I'm talking in circles.
No, it's Steve.
Right. But want to get back to a couple of our commenters here. Genetic says, what cheese recommendations do you have? I'll be sending FSU AD some cheese once the lawsuit is done. Do you have any cheese? I'm a Munster guy.
Yes. Well,
I love Munster cheese.
Yeah. I mean, I like all kinds of cheeses. I would say, if Genetics is still on here, we lived in Michigan. Okay, there's a place, and I think he's from the Midwest. Okay, don't want to put too much out there. I'm pretty sure he's from the Midwest. If you get the chance to go to the state of Michigan, okay, Frankenmuth, Michigan, it's an old German Bavarian type town.
I want to go.
They have a cheese house, JY. They have nothing but cheese, all kinds of cheese. And right next, they have a German inn where you get some Hofbrau. So you can go get your cheese, have some Hofbrau, get some schnitzel.
Steve, you better stop.
All right. And they have the world's largest Christmas store. Bronner's is right around the corner. So you can get drunk, eat cheese, and go
Christmas shopping.
Fantastic place.
That's a dangerous trifecta.
Yes.
The only thing worse is a casino beside it.
Hey,
so
I'm sure there's some there. I do want to expand maybe a little bit more just on that other point that we talked about.
Yeah.
I don't know if Genetics is still on here. I think he is. Yeah. Good point, Aloha. Basically 3 months before camp's open. I don't think that this ends up changing the overall calculus either. Their place in what the overall picture of college football is going to look like in 2, 3, 4 years from now.
Okay.
Where you and I have talked about this many times on camera and off camera. Yeah. It's going to be the P2 and everybody else.
Sure.
If you're not a P2, I don't think right now we're looking at they're this or this is happening or whatever. None of this is going to matter. You're either the P2 or everyone else is going to be basically equal. So that's kind of even a bigger point that a lot of the stuff that they're clinging to now, I don't think is going to matter in 2 or 3 years.
That's pretty drastic.
Yeah, well, that's the
in 2 or 3 years.
Look how much has
That's
changed.
not what we said in our 2030 episode.
Well, I'm not saying they won't play the P2 anymore. Oh. I'm saying that I think more people will come to the understanding in 2 or 3 years that it's the P2 and everybody else.
I got you. Okay. Real quick, I want to get to some other ones here. We got Chad Bracey says something spicy. There we go. Aloha Nate. He answered my question. All those teeth and no toothbrush. Okay. It was a Waterboy reference. Oh, okay. I knew he would have.
I haven't seen that movie in a long time.
Abdullah Ablangata. It's because they have something with their Abdullah Ablangata. Okay. Their anger thing.
Okay.
And their teeth and toothbrush. Yeah. Let's see. Genetics agrees with JY. Oh, I have to say that again. Mm-hmm. Genetics agrees with JY that the D1 Council can vote to take away and can vote to give. Yeah, that's my, You say it doesn't really, it's kind of irrelevant. That's the way I read it. It's kind of the big hublub in X right now. People go, what does this mean? Does it mean this or does it mean that? I'm like, yeah, whatever. Your point is like, who cares?
Yeah, my point is who cares is not going to matter. You're either P2 or you're everybody else.
Yeah, so then we got Pac-12 got stripped of the CFP contract. They already lost it. And then D1 Council just had to vote it official. Yeah. All right, we got Joey Augustine's here. Good to have you, Joey. Thank you for coming back.
And I'm happy Joey agrees with Steve. So
he did say
point
P2,
counterpoint.
And he said faux show.
Yeah.
Well, he said for sure, but I think he meant faux show.
Yeah.
And then we got losing autonomous status, will it affect their TV deal? I don't think, this is Aloha Nate, I don't think it'll affect their TV deal here in the bridge years, the short-term years. I don't think it will, because what the schedules are. They know what they're going for at least next year.
Can we talk about their TV deal real quick?
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to give you some of my rampant speculation on what's holding up the TV deal. I think
you're going to go rampant speculation.
Yes, just going to speculate. Just total rumor. Salacious.
Good. Okay. That's if it's salacious, you can say it.
So what I think is holding up the TV deal is the fact that, and you and I talked about this, so it's not going to be a surprise to you. I think that any TV partner is going to want later games out of these teams. Like that's their value,
sure, right.
Is having those later games. And I think the CW still has ACC games during the week. They did last year, during the early window. So my guess is the CW wants to put them on later. They want to be on early in the day. So like you mentioned, they can get those headlines, the Sports Center highlights, and be on the halftime of the big noon game. They'll show maybe some highlights from that game. So I'm just going to guess. I'm going to speculate. That's probably. I think they both want each other. Like they want to go to the dance together. They just don't know what time. That's my.
Well, and I'll give props for props too. That actually came from Wilner. That was Wilner's thought in terms of they really should get earlier times so that they can have kind of shelf life to their games. So that was all from Wilner, and I thought it was an excellent point, which is why I brought it to the mountain.
Yes.
I never stole a good idea I didn't like.
Yes.
Did I say that right?
I love Wilner, and and maybe that's where the idea got going in my mind was reading. I follow him on Twitter. He's great, fantastic follow. So if you're not following Wilner on Twitter and you're a PAC fan or a Mountain West fan or just a football fan west of the Mississippi, you should be following him.
Awesome. Well, Steve, are we ready to get to the Big Ten? I think you want to talk Michigan spring ball, and then I'm going to get to the Mountain West. I want to talk G5 and the article from The Athletic in terms of a G5 playoff or a G5 reorganization.
Yeah.
So let's start with the Big Ten. What do you got?
Yeah. So first of all, it's not a huge exciting time necessarily in the Big Ten compared to some of the other conferences. There's spring games going on. There's transfers. There's all kinds of that kind of stuff going on. But I did really want to talk about the Michigan spring game. The two games that we really highlighted, the spring games, were Ohio State and Michigan. They face each other in the championship game, the Big Ten championship game, the last 3 years. And there's at least 3 years. And there's questions for both about their they didn't face each other the last 3 years. The winner of that game was in the Big Ten championship game last 3 years. Anyways,
so I was writing myself a note.
Yes, and I was trying to see what you were writing. If you were writing a note to me, anyways. And both teams have quarterback questions going into this year. We talked about that in the preview for the spring game. So I just want to touch on that the score in the spring game never matters, but blue team won 17-7. But the real question with this was who is going to step up at quarterback. Okay, so we went down the list of all the potential quarterbacks in another episode. I got to tell you, so Alex Orji, they used him last year just as a runner. Okay,
Yeah.
and we were wondering, can he come in and be that starting quarterback just to be enough? Michigan's going to be able to run the ball. They're going to play good defense. Can he come in and be good enough as a starter to take them to that level? And he came in right away, first drive, 11 plays, 75-yard touchdown drive. He was using his arm and his legs. Okay. He was 3 for 5 on the drive, just keeping the sticks moving, and then he finished the drive with an 18-yard touchdown.
That's nice.
Yeah, so that was quintessential. That's exactly what Alex Orji brings you. That's what they want from him. They knew that he's an athlete. He's a stellar athlete. He's dynamic. He could use his legs, but could he also complete some passes and keep some drives going?
Right.
So right out of the gate, boom, 75-yard touchdown drive. Now, one of the other candidates for the starting job, senior quarterback Davis Warren. Okay. Been riding the pine, been riding the bench, a lot of experience, been around the program. He came in, led a nice 13-play drive, only 62 yards, but he showed he had command of the offense. Not necessarily a guy who is going to win a Heisman Trophy, but he can go out and just run this offense. Honestly, it reminded me a lot of Cade McNamara, a guy they had a couple years back, who was great for them. So comes out of the gate, nice long 13-play, 62-yard drive, ended in a field goal. But it ran a lot of clock time, which that's what Michigan loves to do. That get a little bit of a lead, run the ball, get some long drives.
Yeah.
So it's a perfect drive for them, and showed he mastered the offense. Then they had some other younger players, some freshmen play, didn't do real well. Jaden Davis came in. I made that basically not really a suggestion, but I asked the question. Jaden Davis, highly ranked freshman, is he going to be ready to come in and be that spark and be real? No, he didn't. Not from the spring game. He came in. He had a couple of drives, short drives, just didn't look that great. Looked uncomfortable. Looked like a true freshman in a spring game. I mean,
shocker.
Yeah, shocker. I think his longest drive ended in a punt from what I remember. I think he had 2 drives.
Okay.
But I want to go back to Davis Warren.
Okay.
He came back in then after they let the freshman play.
Okay.
He came in and kind of finished the game out. And he had 2 drives in the second half that went 40-yard touchdown passes for both.
Wow.
And just he had his unit just running well. And I think the one was a short pass over the middle that the guy took, for a long, so it wasn't like he was dropping bombs all over the place.
A lot of yak on that one.
Yeah, but just showed that he can run that offense. Now, if I remember correctly, I think Alex Orji did come back in and led another drive that it looked like he scored on, but the ref called it as a sack, that he should have been sacked.
Oh, okay.
Because they're playing like no touch.
Sure, right, okay.
But it looked like another good scoring drive. So to me, if you're a Michigan fan and you were worried about what can this team do going forward without JJ, I think they got 2 solid options.
Yep.
You got one guy who is just a good athlete that can beat you both ways. It looks like he can actually throw the ball, and that he's a dynamic runner, which in this offense with this defense is great. And if Orji falters and he's not up to the job, it looks like this senior Warren can just come in, at least just run the offense. Is he going to be that guy that can beat Ohio State and win a playoff game, win another national championship? I don't know, but he looks like a guy that could beat most teams. Just run the ball, hand the ball off, complete passes, keep drives going. So I think they probably feel really good coming out of the spring game about their quarterback situation. So
that's good for them.
Yeah, for them.
I don't think it's good for Joey.
No,
Joey does not like Michigan.
Oh, is Joey
He's the Buckeye fan.
Is he our Buckeye? Okay.
He's a Buckeye.
Well, sorry about that. We did talk about the Buckeyes in a couple other episodes. Neither team has too much to worry about. I mean, they're the class of the field. They have been. Even we have Oregon and Washington coming in, and USC and UCLA. Maybe Oregon challenges one of those two, but both teams just absolutely loaded. So we'll see what the Big Ten's like this year.
So I'm not the Big Ten guy, but I think Oregon will challenge both of them. That's my opinion. Sorry, Joey, but I am so anxious to see this Duck team in the Big Ten this year. I hate to say it was getting stale, but it was kind of getting stale.
Yeah, it was just Michigan and Ohio State.
And you're like, oh, is Penn State good? No. Is Penn State good? No. Is Penn State...
Is Iowa for real? No.
Can we do something?
Yeah.
So they did something.
They did. And honestly, I agree with you. I think Oregon's the team to come and challenge them. But the biggest question about Oregon is, can they come in and match the physicality of the Big Ten?
I understand.
It is a whole different level than what's played in the PAC. We'll see. I think, they have an all-around roster to come in and be successful, but how are they going to hold up, especially in the first year, to that physicality?
Sure.
That's an open question.
No, that's a good point. I want to, got a lot of great comments going on here. Genetic said he's here and wants to hear about this G5 article and some of our thoughts on that. I know we were talking a little bit about that, before we came on live, and I think we do have some opinions on that. Yes. So we'll talk about the article, but then we'll also give our opinions on that here coming up next. But yeah, I think, these spring games are tough. You're going to hear me say that too when I get to, I'm mainly going to be focused on San Diego State and Nevada here, because, it's the touch stuff. It's and I'll tell you what, Nevada, they had some injuries this year at the spring games that you don't ever want to see. Like, this is supposed to, just be getting the plays under you, staying conditioned. If you have a new coach, as Nevada does, trying to, get to know what that's going to look like. And it's hard to judge spring games on any level at all. So,
yeah, and Penn State, they had their blue and white game and played in 30-mile-per-hour winds with 40-mile-per-hour gusts. So we wanted to see how the passing game, if that was going to take a step, and then you play in hurricane conditions. So
sure, right.
We didn't learn anything.
I totally get it. So we ready to, actually, I want to do shout-outs real quick. So thank you, Joey, Aloha Nate, Genetics. We've had a few other commenters, Dave, continuing the comments. Mr. Ed threw some up here with the PAC. I don't think we read his. Would PAC future autonomy status mean Sankey and Petiti would have to share more of the CFP payout? If that's the case, no way. PAC get autonomous status back. Any thoughts on Mr. Ed?
Read that one again.
Okay, so would PAC future autonomy status mean Sankey and Petiti would have to share more of the CFP payout? If that's the case, no way PAC gets the autonomous status back. No way that they actually do get it back.
I think those are two separate issues. We're talking about the D1 Council and how they view teams versus the college football playoff, that committee, that executive council. They just basically figured out how they were going to break up the revenue. I don't think those two, they might be indirectly connected, but I don't think it's going to have a definite impact either way.
Okay. And Leo says it's a cheese Haas, Haus.
Yes.
And let me just say, I was just in Pittsburgh. See, you guys are getting me on tilt talking about
let's go.
German beer and Wiener Schnitzel.
Yeah.
And so I was just in Pittsburgh. They have a legit Hofbrauhaus in Pittsburgh. Legit. Yeah. Beautiful. The live band all open with the Marzen and the Hefeweizen. And oh my goodness,
let's
I could
do our
live
next
there.
Live show from there.
We should go to Pittsburgh and have it from the Hofbrauhaus. But anyway, don't get me started. I've said this too many times. I went to Milwaukee a couple of years ago. Oh, if I lived there, Steve, I would never be sober again.
I hear you.
It's amazing. Yeah. But anyway, all right, let's get to. Oh, I wanted to ask. So, do we have some of our normals? So usually Chris from the Trailhead Club, we usually get him on here. Big Mama, haven't heard from Big Mama at all tonight. Steven, haven't heard from Steven, although I know he sometimes records on a Wednesday night. Mr. Farmer Bun, which is Matt, can't think of his last name. Matt somebody. And then that college football guy. We haven't seen him. He's probably driving.
He's on the road.
He's on the road. You got to be careful if you're on the road. So anyway, just do some shout outs to some of our typical live Big Mountain guests here. So let's get to it. G5 leaders discussing a G5 playoff. So I'm going to go over just real briefly what the article said, and then we can have some good interaction. And we want to hear from some of our wonderful fans and subscribers and commenters as well on this. So article was from The Athletic. Chris Vanini. According to a report that he's writing about, a group of 5 administrators had a preliminary discussion on the possibility of a G5 only postseason playoff. And that's kind of what we were talking about. Discussion was also had regarding a wide-scale G5 realignment with the involvement of private equity. I know that PE term gets people, they shiver when they hear that, but apparently that was a part of it. To be clear, nothing's imminent. They made that very, very clear. Nothing's imminent that this is going to happen. These are only discussions, and they could lead nowhere. We don't know, but there's definitely discussions going on. There are some smaller plans, such as replacing the bowl games with some sort of a postseason, and some bigger plans, such as, again, reorganization under one banner with multiple divisions. Basically, this is a separation of by their terms, the G5 terms, not on the terms of the P2. So we've heard a lot over the past couple months. The P2 is going to break away. The P2 is going to do this, and even with the CFP, hey, you got to give the P2 what they want. At least the rumors. You got to give the P2 what they want. Yada yada yada. This could be a separation of the G5 on the G5's terms, so to speak, than having someone dictate to them what they're going to look like, or they're kind of left behinds, if you will. Of course, tons of hurdles they have to get through here. Every conference has their own separate media rights deals. Yep. There's exit fees potentially involved if you're looking at a reorganization. There's power and control, which no one likes to give up. That's why it's money and power. That's what rules at least the United States. Money and power and control is what that is. Nobody's going to want to give that up. So that's a hurdle they have to figure out. And then there's just financial differences between the conferences. I mean, when you look at the finances of an American or a Mountain West versus the finances of a Conference USA, yeah, they're different. Look at the TJ Altimore spreadsheets and charts. He lays them out really, really well. Yep. They're not equal. And of course, everybody focuses on the big graphs of the power conferences, and they kind of forget about the others. But if you just focus on the G5, you can see there's disparity there as well, just within the G5. So at this point, I wouldn't read too much into this. I think it's a great article in terms of what could be for the G5. And let's start with, Steve, I think the playoffs, because I think a G5 playoff is maybe more realistic than any sort of G5 just complete realignment and reorganization of what the G5 or G6, dare I say G6 at this point? I don't know. But the G5 is going to look like. So let's talk postseason first. And I believe it was, and we're going to go with our conversation more of, so there's the one G5 team that makes the college football playoff. That's, they're out of this. They're in the college football playoff, at least as we know it now. And then the rest of the G5s would have their own playoff. What do you think?
So, well, first of all, you said, could we go with a G6? In my opinion, if you were going to classify things truthfully, there's a P2 and a G8.
My apologies. I did it again.
Yeah, but I know where you're going on this. So I was going to say, part of this gets me excited, and part of it is, let's just throw a cold shower on it, because it's probably not going to happen anytime soon. So the playoff thing, I agree with you. That is much more likely. I could definitely see that happening. And I think a lot of people would be really excited. I'm excited about that prospect, and I really think a lot of college football fans would be excited. I think it could draw ratings, and I think it would be pretty simple to do, especially, let's say if you got ESPN as a partner for this. The ESPN already owns half of the bowls, all these BS bowls that you hear, this bowl, the All-State, or the
I don't know, the
Slayer,
BS bowl.
the Tax Slayer bowl, the Salty Nuts bowl, the Scratch My Butt bowl, whatever. All these different bowls. ESPN owns half of them. Okay. So if you get them involved, they would really go easily. And you could incorporate the bowl games. You could have a G5 playoff. Yes, if one of the G5 makes the CFP, great. They can go have fun playing in that big old sandbox. Sure, but the rest of them could do their own thing each year, have a playoff, and I think you could easily come up with, I'm sure ESPN would do a deal outside of their normal regular season deals that they have, but a playoff deal, a G5 playoff deal, great, would be fantastic television, getting us through the month of December, as maybe in between CFP games, because there's some, we look at the CFP schedule, like there's some big gaps in there.
Yes.
They're traditionally filled by all the BS bowls. And I think there's a great opportunity for that. Now, the other part of it, I think a lot of that, everything else in there, I think it's just we're getting way too ahead of ourselves. Put the cart before the horse. Yeah. I understand your perspective about, you're saying like maybe the G5 wants to take control of their own destiny instead of just being Well, I don't think that's going to happen. And why? Because money and power. Money and power are being consolidated in the Power 2, and it's just going to be that whatever's left, the leavings are going to trickle down to everybody else. And I think everybody else, the ACC, the Big 12, who are currently the conferences that are currently the G5, are going to have to wait until that consolidation finalizes, until the Big 10 and the SEC decide, who do we want, who's valuable enough for us. Then everybody else is going to have to come together. And there's going to be some programs. We talk about Washington State and Oregon State a lot. Yeah. There's going to be some programs that think they're sitting high and mighty in the ACC right now, and maybe in the Big 12, that are just going to be everybody else, and they're going to have to figure it out together. So we did have one question kind of connected to this. Somebody asked about, should the ACC and the Big 12 have their own playoff? I don't like that idea nearly as much, because the ACC and the Big 12, they're hitching their entire wagon to the P2, trying to stay with them. Yeah. Even if they're the little brother falling behind with their hand in your pocket kind of thing, their entire wagon is hitched to staying with the P2 as long as they can. If they go and do their own playoff, that's just them further admitting that they're not at that level with the P2. Right. And I don't see that happening anytime soon. I think the more likely scenario is that those two eventually, maybe after the next CFP deal, will fall backwards towards the rest of the G and come up with some kind of alternate playoff to the CFP.
Yeah, I get that. I got to give a shout out to Luke Fletcher, because he says Wyoming G5 team no one is talking about. Well, I talk about him because I love Wyoming.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just had to give a shout out because he brought up Wyoming. Luke, I don't know why. I just had to.
Yeah, no, I mean, why-o? I totally get it. Luke asked the question, would people watch a G5 playoff more?
I saw that. That was going to be my next one.
Yep. Yeah, I suppose. I think so. And I don't think it's a more than. I think it's an alternative. Instead of having Virginia play, I don't even know, UTEP in the Salty Nuts Bowl of Reno or whatever.
Loving salty nuts.
Yeah, something, whatever. I think an actual competitive playoff where you had maybe the best team in the MAC playing the best team in the Sun Belt, and it actually means something. I think that would draw a lot of interest, and I think you could still incorporate those bowls and use them.
So I was going to say, it's not an all. Well, I'm asking maybe, is it an all or nothing? It's playoffs with no bowls, or it's playoffs and you still have some salty nuts bowls.
Yeah.
But
sure.
I don't know. I mean, maybe you do have both, because if you do a playoff, I mean, there's a lot more G5 teams playing in bowls right now than would play in a playoff. But I think anytime the game is meanwe'll in a playoff situation, you're gonna drive more viewers. You're gonna drive more everything than a salty nuts bowl. We're gonna make a TBM salty nuts bowl. Yeah. When we hit the big time, we're going with Planters. The Planters Big Mountain Salty Nuts Bowl.
Yes, I like it.
It's coming.
So here's the thing. People love their Maction games. Okay?
They do.
Wednesday,
I love Maction during the week.
So who wouldn't love, during the months of December, G5 playoff games, MAC teams, Sun Belt teams, whatever, playing for something meaningful. Yeah. Wednesday nights, Thursday nights. I think they could get a lot of interest in that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the other side to this then is, and I would say my comments mirror most of your comments. I think it's interesting, A, because it's just different, but B, because they're meaningful games. I mean, it hurts me a little bit to say that, because that makes me sound like the bowls are completely meaningless.
Some of them are. Half the players don't play.
Well, that's the problem, right? Like, if you're going to these bowls where some players are sitting out and there's no meaning to them, I mean, it happens with any bowl. This isn't G5 issues. Sure. This is bowl issues. Up and down the whole bowl schedule. So
ask yourself this: would you rather watch the 7th place ACC team play against the 8th place Big 12 game, where half the players are sitting out on both teams because they already went or they went to the portal,
right?
Or
all the good players anyway.
Yeah, all the good players. Or would you rather watch maybe the MAC champion playing the Sun Belt champion in a semifinal on Wednesday night, and maybe Thursday night your Mountain West champion playing the AAC champion?
Sure. I want to see champion versus champion.
Right, exactly.
That's what honestly, who wouldn't want to see that?
Exactly.
And I'm with so we got that college football guy. He's on. I shouted out. He's with us. We also got Big Mama. Big Mama's with us as well. And but yeah, so that college football guy said put the playoff from December 10th to just before Christmas. Own that time slot for Pete's sake. That's the G5 playoff time slot.
I love it.
So let me go back real quick. We're getting a lot of great comments. So let me just let me go back here real quick. I apologize for our break. We don't want to miss anybody. If you see anything, just shout it out, Steve.
Okay.
Genetics says he doesn't see the benefit of reorganizing the G5. Let's talk reorganization here next. I know we're on playoff.
I think I'm with Genetics on this. I don't see any benefit now. I really think you have to let the chips fall with the P2, figure out who they're going to take. They say bullshit runs downhill. You got to let the top of the food chain sort themselves out and then figure it out down through. I don't think right now makes a lot of sense for the reorg of the G5. And something you and I talked about off camera before we started is once the P2 decides who they want, maybe everybody else comes together then and reorganizes and maybe goes back to regional conferences, which is what we've had in college football a long time. The regionality helps with rivalries and it helps contain costs because if they're going to be getting a lower piece of the pie than they were before, we may see a reorganization back towards regional conferences. But I don't think that happens until the P2 decides what they're going to do and who's going to be in it.
Well, that's a little bit what Mr. Ed says, a little bit. So and this is what we talked about before we came live as well. He says, in his opinion, FBS should separate into 3 divisions and have their own college football playoff. Division 1, the SEC and the Big 10. Division 2, he calls it the P3 and P4, so the ACC and the Big 12. And then Division 3 is the G5. Do you want to talk a little bit about your speculation on that whole P3, P4 situation maybe moving forward and what we talked about where you're going to have the P2, the SEC, call them for what they are.
Yeah.
The SEC and the Big 10, the Big 12 probably holding on the longest here, right? Like they've done enough, and I know you've said that a lot, to last the longest, ensure their survival longer than anyone else. Because I think we all know if the ACC loses FSU, Clemson, and maybe a few more schools, they're where the PAC was. Now, and I don't mean that they're going to blow up necessarily, but I do mean they're now a G5 conference because I see all of this speculation that, well, if they lose these schools, they're going to backfill with group of 5 schools. And what I said to you earlier was, well, then they're a group of 5 thing. And that's not a knock on group of 5.
No.
Again, I'm a group of 5 guy, but that's the caliber of athletic programs that you're having there because the other upper echelon teams are moving up. So I think we're kind of in the Division 1 is SEC and Big 10.
Yeah.
Division 2 maybe is just Big 12 for a little while until they fall apart, and then it's everybody else. Yes. So you're eventually going to get to the top 2 and everybody else. And, is it going to be that way for the playoffs or not? I don't know. Right. But that's certainly the way it looks like it's headed.
And that's why it's so hard to determine what everyone else should do until the P2 figures it out. Because here's why. We're talking about the ACC. There is a massive difference. If the ACC were to only lose Florida State and Clemson, they can hold on and be a viable conference. They're not going to be on the level of the SEC or the Big 10, but they can hold on. Now, if they were to lose, 6, 7 teams, if that were to start, a domino effect, the ACC is done as we know it. So there's such a huge difference in possibilities, and that will make such a big difference to everyone else. If the ACC, because the core of the ACC is the Tobacco Road, is North Carolina. If they can keep UNC, and I know we had a question about that about one of the North Carolina state senators. It looks like a lot of the decision makers, the political leaders and decision makers in the state of North Carolina want to keep that core together now. That could change in 5 years and 10 years, whatever. If they're getting lower revenues, but for right now, if the ACC can keep North Carolina, North Carolina State, Duke, Wake Forest, and keep Virginia, and they can stay as a viable conference that is somewhat on par with the Big 12.
Sure,
but if they lose 6 to 8 teams, it's a total different story. If they lose North Carolina, it's end game. I think for if they lose UNC, it's just end game for the ACC. So that's going to play into, that's going to basically decide, I think, whether there's 3 layers or there's just 2, just the P2 and everybody else, or if there is a good viable kind of middle ground. But it's too hard to determine at this point.
So we got some comments saying that a group of 5 playoff game on Wednesday night. Hell yes, that sounds
exactly.
You lock us up.
We'll drink some Hofbräu and eat some cheese.
You're bringing me back again, Steve.
Let's do it.
I'm on tilt with the Hofbräu house. And then Squeeze Money says, as long as they don't play the championship game on a Sunday at noon, like what they do with the FCS championship, that college football guy is hating speech to text. Yeah. I completely concur with that. It's awful. And I feel, I don't speak great. Lord knows that. But my goodness, I don't know what speech to text is doing sometimes. What else we got? I guess that pretty much gets us caught up. What's Aloha Nate here?
Aloha Nate's talking about different championships for different revenue levels, and he's comparing it to March Madness. Well, one thing is there's a huge difference with, at least there has been a huge difference with March Madness and the college football playoff. Now we'll see if they start to get more similar. If the P2 fight to have more of their own teams in the tournament, or decide to go and do their own tournament. I don't know if it's a good comparison right now. College football is so different. There's a smaller number of games. Each team plays a smaller number of games. Their playoffs are generally smaller. So I don't know if that's a great comparison.
Okay. Somebody says Maction is the best. I think that was Joey. I agree. Maction is the best. Thank goodness for Wednesday night football and Thursday and Friday and all. Fall's the greatest time of year.
Yeah.
So with that, let's get to some Mountain West stuff. You ready to go Mountain West here a little bit?
Do it.
So I've got a few schools I want to talk about. First off, I got to talk Wyoming because Wyoming was brought back up. Yeah. Wyoming actually has to change their spring game, Steve, from Saturday till Thursday tomorrow because of weather that's happening. That happens in the Rocky Mountains. So they actually are having their spring game tomorrow, Thursday at 3:30. Lord knows if I was in that area, I would be there, but I'm not in that area, so I can't go. But anybody that likes Wyoming and you're in the area and you care, I'm sure you probably already know that, but if you don't, you heard it here first.
Hang out in Laradice, watch some spring football.
Heck yeah. So the other thing, you're never going to believe this, Steve. The last 2 weeks ago, we did a live broadcast. I talked Utah State. Mm-hmm. Well, a lot's changed with the Aggies since 2 weeks ago, specifically to their quarterback situation. So Spencer Petras is now leading the quarterback competition. He's the transfer from Iowa. Yep. And because he's now leading, guess what? The other 2 starters from last year, their 2 starters are transferring out. At least they've put their names into the portal. Cooper Lagasse and McKay Hillstead. McKay Hillstead, I said, was their future. He's a sophomore. He looked great last year as a freshman. He wasn't supposed to start. Oh, that's so... I feel awful for Utah State. But you know what? They've chosen to go through and adding through the portal, and that's what can happen. So they added Petras. They also added Bryson Barnes from Utah. And so they bring in 2 guys, and the 2 guys that they had, they say, I'm out. Sorry. For whatever the case, you didn't believe in me or you thought somebody was better. The Cooper Lagasse thing, it is what it is. He was a senior, so, okay, you brought another starter in. Yep. McKay Hillstead, that is a big loss for them. Whoever gets that kid, I'm going to follow him because he has a very, very good arm. So just want to do a couple quick updates on them. So, San Diego State and Nevada. Anything you want to chime in on before I go to those 2 schools?
Maybe they can hang on to the young quarterback. You can see what his options are out there. Yeah. One thing I've heard is this year that we have seen a trend in the portal of more players doing that, entering their name in the portal, seeing what options are out there, and then deciding to stay. So we'll see.
So Luke Fletcher, okay, he's talking Wyo, so we got to go Pokes here. Okay. I wasn't going to go Pokes tonight, but we're going Pokes. He asked about Evan Svoboda for Wyoming. How does he look? So I am high on Evan Svoboda. I've said that since the end of last year. I was high on Peasley. Yep. Steve always pats my back because I took the massive over as an ice-cold lock. For those of you that don't know, you're new because of ACC or because of PAC or because of, I don't know, you just found us. We like to pick games. Yes. And I was heavy YO last year. They were, was it 5.5 wins, which was asinine to me. I locked them to be at 8 or 9, and of course they hit it. And Matt Ritson. Thanks, Matt Ritson. We'll read you in a minute. But so I went heavy him, and it was because of Peasley. I was really confident Peasley was going to take that step forward, and he did. That guy's a beast. He should live in Polk history in the record books for forever.
Especially
just because
that Fresno game.
The
first half of the Fresno game.
The dude has. You were talking nuts. I'll call him balls. But anyway, Evan Svoboda. Let's get to this next year. I am high on Evan. He's younger. He will make mistakes. This dude, I think he's like 6'6" or something like that. He can run, dual threat. He's, again, gonna make mistakes. But what I have seen from Coach, really happy with him so far. You know, not every practice in spring ball has been a great practice, but for their scrimmage, he was really happy with Svoboda. He made really good reads. They've got a good running game. The issue with Wyoming next year is going to be their offensive line. It's not going to be the playmakers. It's going to be the protection. So as long as they can shore that up enough for a Mountain West Conference, I think Wyoming, I'm going to be high on them again. They've got the playmakers in order to do it. I think they're going to have a better defense than they had this past year in Wyoming. They're certainly not going to take a step back.
Right.
If anything, it'll be the same. But I think they're going to take a step ahead. I'm just worried about that offensive line, but very high on Svoboda. I'm anxious to see what he's going to do here in Wyoming. Let's get to Matt. What's Matt say? I think 70-team Super League divisions breakdown team, West, Southwest, Plains, Midwest, Northeast, Southeast, South, G5 10 team in the bracket.
It's a long comment. Matt Risen, a super fan.
That's right.
You know, so it's funny. We just recorded an episode. We did a 32 team Super League. We're gonna be that video should be hitting next week? I think
probably Monday or Tuesday.
Monday or Tuesday. So we broke down a 32 team Super League. We wanted to just make it kind of on the NFL format, but you know, I like your idea of a 70 team. That might just be too big. That's the thing. I think it'd be a lot of fun. Like what you're describing here and with the different regions sounds fantastic. It might be a lot of fun. I think the problem with it is I think the 70 is probably just too many teams where the media partners don't see enough value. So we broke it down to 32, but then we also, each of us had some honorable mentions, some teams just outside that 32. So I would take a look at that. But I would love, you know, and maybe a 64 team. Where you could have regionality, like he mentions the different regions. I just think it may be a little difficult to sell Fox, ESPN on putting so many teams in there with some diminishing value of return.
Well, and it's interesting because there's two ways, and you'll see this when we do the draft.
Yeah.
Right. I went for more. I guess I'll call it more the Big Ten approach.
Yeah.
If you
National
will.
Conference.
I went a national conference. Yeah. Right. Which I want certain. I want to make sure I get the Southwest and the Northwest and the Southeast and Texas and Midwest. Like when I drafted, I'm giving it away a little bit, but I wanted the national conference. And you a little bit, and I don't know if you did this intentionally, if it just kind of ended up that way, but you were more interested in the rivalries, maybe.
Historic
again, not regional.
Programs, historic blue bloods,
right.
rivalries.
So you can look at this, maybe you want the national conference. Maybe you want the rivalry conference. Right. Maybe you want, as Matt's saying, hey, we're going to have a huge conference, but we're going to regionalize it. Yeah. So that, you know, you can get kind of the way the NFL, well, the NFL is not so great, but the NHL does it better. The NFL's all over the freaking place. Yeah. Their maps are screwed up. But like the NHL, the NBA, that is more regionalized. It's a little bit more like that, but it's double, right? They got 30 teams in them, and we picked 30. He's talking 70. Maybe the next one we should do is a freaking 70 team.
Well, how crazy? Yeah, maybe maybe we'll do that. So, but how crazy would it be if we went through all this conference realignment, whatever, and then we ended up with a super league of, you know, let's say 70, 64 teams or 70, whatever, a really large super league, and then went back to regionals, a southeastern region, a west coast region, a midwest region, and maybe a northeastern. How crazy would it be to go through all of this musical chairs and then end up back with like regional divisions again? So I like Matt Risen, again, super fan. I love your idea. Sounds like a lot of fun. I think just the biggest hurdle to that is going to be there just isn't enough programs that have enough value that the media partners are going to want to pay equal shares.
Yes.
For all those teams, and if you're not paying equal shares, then you're not having the competitive balance and all that. So
So maybe we'll do a draft 2.0 and go to 70. I don't know. We got to get this first episode out first. And genetics kind of agrees in terms of the networks, right? The networks aren't going to allow that, and they're driving a lot of this right
driving
now.
the bus.
They're the ones behind. They're the man behind the curtain right now.
They're the sugar mamas. They're filling your gas tank. They're buying your steak and potatoes. Yeah.
So I'm going to give Matt Ritson a thumbs up. Boop. Thank you for that, sir. Appreciate you.
Matt Ritson. Okay.
Yeah, Ritson. So let's get back. Where was I? I was at where was I? I was at Wyoming. I was going off on Wyoming for a while because Luke had me going on at Evan Svoboda. So let's get to San Diego State. Just a couple comments on San Diego State, a couple comments on Nevada. So San Diego State did have their spring game. A lot of spring games here on the 20th. A.J. Duffy was the sophomore transfer from Florida State University. He went 7 of 11 for 112 yards, 2 touchdowns, looked pretty good. We know that offense is likely to change dramatically here this coming year from where they were last year. And Brown 4, another transfer that we talked about before, he was 5 receptions for 79 yards and a touchdown. Coach Lewis, I heard a little bit of his comments after the game. He was very happy with the spring so far. Was happy with the QB play. Again, A.J. Duffy was very happy with the progress that they made over the spring from practice 1 to the spring game here. So he is uber positive down in Aztec land. We'll see what happens in the fall, but a massive changing of the guard from what they had in the previous year in the coach and what they have now. It's going to be a high-powered offense. Well, I don't know if they'll have the personnel right from the get-go to get going, but I'll tell you, Coach Lewis was super excited. He was popping all over the place. He must have had a couple Red Bulls before that press conference. He was going for it.
Well, I'll tell you, this is a good poster child for the positive aspects of the transfer portal.
Yes.
Everyone is talking about how, the G5 teams are being robbed or non-P2 teams are being robbed and all the talent is moving in one direction. But this is a case, A.J. Duffy, you have a talented player who goes to a top-level program and just doesn't make it. He's not going to be the starter at that program. He gets an opportunity to go be a starter, that brand-new stadium and the Aztecs are playing in. The San Diego State gets to upgrade their quarterback position. He may have a fantastic season, a great career there, actually get to play, wherein, previous years, 15 years ago, he may have been stuck on the bench. Florida State never started. We had Matt Castle years ago who was on the bench at USC. It never started a game in his career. In this case, you have players have that opportunity. They have that agency to move left, right, up, down. Will find a situation that's better for them. So I'm happy for San Diego State. And I'm happy for Duffy.
Well, and speaking of that, wasn't there just and this isn't quite as the same, but there was fairly highly touted, I believe, it was a receiver that went from Georgia to Minnesota
recently. Yes.
Recently,
Yeah.
And again, that's power two to power two.
Yeah.
I get that, but yes, I think the transfer, the ability for these students that go to or athletes that go to a Florida State or a power two type of team, and just there's one guy that just is slightly better or just gets the luck or the draw, and now they can go to a San Diego State. There ain't nothing wrong with starting at San Diego State, let me tell you. And he could be the guy and give himself a name. I think that downward trajectory is just as strong. We've done a couple episodes of that. You see, it'll churn every direction. And we've got a great one here from Aloha Nate. San Diego State needs an offense if they want to sell seats.
Absolutely.
100%. People want to see people scoring on offense if you're going to sell out Snapdragon Stadium. And Lord knows it was pretty pathetic last year.
Aloha Nate also makes the point of, and we talked about it on other episodes, that the quarterback from USC going to Boise State, Malachi Nelson, tons of talent, just didn't work out at USC, but he's got his whole career ahead of him, lots of talent. Could be the infusion of talent in that position that Boise needs to challenge for one of those CFP spots.
And they said he's looked pretty good. I'm going to be doing Boise here in a week or two. We'll do again, I'm doing San Diego State and Nevada Day. I'm going to do Boise. We'll be talking about him. We'll be talking about Madsen. But yeah, they said he's been looking good. The thing that I've heard is, he's coming in, the wording, the terminology, everything's new.
Absolutely.
So the guys that have been in the room, they know exactly what coach is talking about. Where Malachi's going, what the heck does that mean? We called it this at USC, and
Yes.
you're calling it that.
Yep.
And so, he's got that massive education hurdle or terminology hurdle to kind of get over. But I think they've been pretty impressed so far. A lot of learning to do there.
Yes.
I don't think he's a starter next year for them. I just think he's maybe 2 or 3 years from now. But they've been pretty happy with him there at San Diego State.
He's got all
or
the
Boise State.
Boise State. Yeah, he's got all the talent in the world. If they can bring him on and develop, I mean, that could be a huge program changer.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, Aloha Nate, one of our best commenters on all of our videos. Every time I'm going and I'm looking at the new comments on our videos, and I'm like, wow, that's a great comment. 9 times out of 10, it's Aloha Nate. So we appreciate you for sure.
So thoughts on, so I'm going to get to Nevada, but I got to get to Squeeze Money. Thoughts on the whole Arizona Coyotes situation. So Squeeze Money knows we get on a little hockey tip. Hockey has been my, honestly, favorite sport since I was 7 years old.
Yeah, Skipjacks, Baltimore Skipjacks.
Baltimore Skipjacks, Washington Capitals. But anyway, what do I think about this? I think this has been a long time coming. This should have been done many years ago. The fact that a NHL team was playing in Arizona State University's arena that sat, was it 4,500 or something like that?
Yeah.
That just can't happen. That's a bad look for the daggone league. And they did everything. Bettman did everything he could to keep the damn team in Arizona. I liked it. You would hope they could work in Arizona. Arizona's, I think, a growing population,
huge
but it's a freaking desert.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, that Western stuff, the Southwestern especially, they're hard sells. I mean, it took a while for LA to get going until freaking Gretzky got there, for crying out sake. Yeah. And that's LA. I think the move to Utah is phenomenal. That's the market they should have been in for a long time. So I feel bad for any Arizona fans. I feel bad for Coyote fans. I think it's a great move for the league.
I think it's a good short-term move. I think I'm just going to place a wager that the NHL is not done in that Arizona Phoenix market. I think they will come back again, another bite at the apple, as Doug Rowan says. We'll see. As long as Gary Bettman's still alive and kicking, and there's still breath in his lungs, I think they're going to try again at some point to move a team there, or they're not giving up. I think this is a short-term give up, not a forever.
Well, there's rumors about going to Atlanta again. Yeah. They failed there multiple times already. Just give it up, for Pete's sake. All right, anyway, let's get back to football. I think there was another one I did that. Oh, kimchi, pancake. I totally agree. Mountain West is the only FBS conference west of the Central Time Zone. Yes, and that's exactly what we've been saying here in the Mountain. Mm-hmm. Thank you for that comment. We think if you can bring in, or whatever it looks like, merger, whatever, bring in Oregon State and Washington State, the Mountain West Conference, or those teams in the Mountain West Conference, call it whatever you're going to call it, is the premier western side of the country conference for college football. It only makes sense. It needs to be done. And again, I love the Mountain West. I'd like it to be the Mountain West. But whatever it is, it needs to be that, because that is the FBS conference on the western side.
I think it's going to happen. I think it's a definite that it's going to happen.
So let's go to Nevada. So Jeff Coate, the new head coach coming from Texas. He was the co-D coordinator down in Texas. Really energetic, looking to give the Wolfpack some sort of identity now. They've just been struggling over the past couple years, ever since they had that huge upheaval 2 years ago, going on 3 now. He's going to set a high standard. They may not hit that high standard, but he's going to set it there and say, this is where I want you to get. And again, they're looking for long-term growth. It looks like, and it's easy to be said when you're a new coach, he could be out in 2 years. Who knows? But he's got that long-term game plan. He knows where he wants to get this team and this football program. A lot of hard work. They've got a great basketball school there, and it's a good region of the country that, they should be able to fill stadiums with football if they're putting on a decent product here. So they did have their silver and blue spring game on April 13th, one of the earlier spring games, at least for the Mountain West. The final score, 21-15. The defense actually won the game. The offense is just going to be a work in progress. There's going to be a ton of growing / learning pains here for for Nevada and the Wolfpack. And as I said when we started the video, some big injuries out here in spring ball. They actually had to bring the stretcher out for one of the players. And yeah, like you just don't want to see that in spring ball. Like injuries, yeah, it's tough. I mean, you want to work them hard. You gotta get your game plans in there. But I hate seeing people that get injured, potentially pretty bad in spring ball. It's not good. It's not good. So, what else? Isn't the Mountain West now the premier West Coast conference? Anyway, yes, they are. 100% agree.
Yeah.
Who was that? Kevin. Thank you, Kevin. You concur with us here in the mountain. We've said that for 4 months.
Yeah, but there's room there. Like you could. There's definitely room for improvements. Adding Washington State and Oregon State would be huge. Merging with them, merging into the PAC, whatever, reverse merger, double merger, sideways merger. There is opportunity there to be even better than what the Mountain West is now, and position themselves really strongly for what the heck is going to happen in the next 10 years with college football.
Yeah, for sure. And Aloha Nate says he was in the Glendale area, just doesn't understand how they couldn't make it work. They gave them every opportunity, the NHL, to make it work in Glendale, in my opinion. It just didn't.
Yeah, I've read different things about Atlanta and lessons learned if they were to do it again. And I've read a lot of stuff. Yes, the NHL gave them every opportunity, but you need a good pairing. In both Vegas and Seattle, you had these great, everything was aligned. You had these great ownership groups that laid the foundation, set the stage. They had great facilities in place as soon as they moved there.
Sure.
I don't know that you really had that in Arizona, but it is what it is.
Well, they couldn't get them on.
That's the
stadium.
thing. Yeah.
I mean, again, it's not just the NHL. You need partners.
Yes, you need
whatever
partners.
the partners.
I don't think they have
whether it's
partners.
the owner, a strong ownership group, a strong area, Glendale. You need all of that to make it work. Can't be a one leg of a three-legged stool trying to make this sucker work. But
Seattle had, both Vegas and Seattle, everything going for. They were basically building the arena before they even knew what the team was going to be. What it was going to be.
Oh, it is Vegas.
Vegas, but also Seattle.
Seattle as well. Yeah. So, just want to remind everybody, we started with this. We have two really fun episodes dropping the beginning of next week. We have a movie episode where we rank college football movies. It's a lot of fun. We bring on a special guest. He talks college football. He actually talks 70s college football. He brings up movies I've never heard of, but they sound amazing. And then we kind of give our TBM top 5. Top 5. Burt Reynolds might be one of these. Might talk about him. The other one we could do, as we talked about, we do a P2 draft. Yep. So we take blank slate. JY picks a 16-member conference. Steve picks a 16-member conference. And you can see which 32 teams make it into the Big Mountain Power, what do we call it? Super League.
Super League.
Super League. Yeah. So that'll be fun. We'll get those probably out on Monday and Tuesday. We've got an FSU episode dropping tomorrow. We have a Clemson episode dropping on Friday because there is some things happening behind the scenes. Yep. Nothing major, but there is some movement. And I think we're going to see more Clemson information coming probably either late next week or the week after because there's deadlines that the ACC has got to hit. So, man, Steve, we got through a ton tonight.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Great episode. We had a lot of our best fans here interacting. That's why we love doing these live episodes is the interaction. It's just so much more fun. It keeps the conversation going. You and I love to talk. We love to hear ourselves talk. We love to talk to each other about football, but it makes it even better when we get our Big Mountain dwellers on here with us.
That's right. We had a great group. I think we got up to about 40 at one point. Yeah. We want to thank everybody from being on here, for dropping those comments, for the special, what do you call them?
I think a super fan.
Super fan, super comment, super chat. Yeah, we still got to learn some of this stuff. Yeah. Super chat. But anyway, hey, thanks to you too, Squeeze Money. Appreciate it. Hopefully we'll be able to continue doing these every week. We might have to miss one every now and then. But yeah, so I think we're done. We good?
We're good.
All right, hey.
Take us out.
We thank you guys for joining us on the Big Mountain. Remember, we got episodes coming out all the time. Mountain West, Big Ten, PAC, ACC. We're crazy up in here on the Big Mountain. Remember, you like us here. Subscribe to our channel if you're new, and we'll see you next time on the Big Mountain.